Hello learners, I am Deepu Bosumatari, Assistant Professor of Philosophy at Krishnakanta Hendek State Open University. Today we will be discussing concept of ideal state and introduction from the paper on social and political philosophy. This unit will be covered in 3 videos. In today's video, we will provide a general introduction to the concept of ideal state and explore different philosophical perspectives on the ideal state, starting with the views of Plato and Aristotle. Let's begin the video with a general understanding of the ideal state. The ideal state is a philosophical construct that envisions the most just, harmonious, and equitable form of governance, rooted in human aspiration for a society that maximizes well-being and minimizes conflict. The concept has been a recurring theme in political philosophy. Across history, thinkers have sought to answer fundamental questions about how societies should be organized, who should wield power, and how justice can be achieved. From ancient civilization to modern political theories, philosophers have grappled with the nature of justice, the distribution of power, and the role of the individual within the collective. At its core, an ideal state represents a vision of human coexistence that transcends historical and cultural boundaries. While its manifestations differ depending on philosophical tradition and societal context, the idea remains a universal quest for balance, a state where justice is upheld, peace is maintained, and human flourishing is prioritized. It embodies humanity's hopes for a world that can rise above chaos, inequality, and conflict. The ideal state serves not only as a blueprint for governance but also as a moral compass, guiding societies towards a higher standard of political and ethical integrity. Throughout history, notable philosophers have contributed diverse interpretations of the ideal state, each influenced by their era's social, political, and economic realities. Ancient thinkers like Plato envisioned a hierarchical society led by philosophers king, emphasizing wisdom and virtue as prerequisites for governance. In contrast, Aristotle proposed a balanced constitutional model that accommodated human diversity and practical realities. The medieval period saw the merging of religious doctrines with political ideals, shaping the concept of governance under divine law. The Enlightenment brought a shift toward individual rights, social contracts, and democratic principles, championed by figures such as John Locke, Rousseau. Meanwhile, revolutionary thinkers like Karl Marx offered critiques of power dynamics, imagining an ideal state as a classless, stateless society. These philosophical perspectives underscore the evolving nature of the ideal state, reflecting humanity's changing values and priorities. The concept is not static, it adapts to address contemporary challenges such as globalization, technological advancement, and environmental sustainability. In the modern world, where issues like climate change, systematic inequality, and political instability demand urgent solution, the ideal state remains a vital framework for envisioning a better future. An ideal state seeks to balance competing interests, ensuring the rights of individuals while promoting the common good. It raises critical questions about governance, such as the tension between authority and freedom, equality and meritocracy, and tradition and progress. While no single model of an ideal state may fully satisfy these demands, the ongoing pursuit of this ideal drives philosophical inquiry, political innovation, and societal reform. This essay delves into the multifaceted concept of the ideal state, examining contribution from prominent philosophers across historical epochs. It explores the foundational principles of governance, the ethical dimension of political authority, and the implications of these ideas for contemporary societies. By engaging with these perspectives, we gain insight into the enduring significance of the ideal state as a beacon for human progress and justice. So learners, after providing a broad introduction to the concept of ideal state, we will now look at the historical foundation of the ideal state. Plato, often regarded as the first systematic political philosopher, laid out his vision of an ideal state in the Republic, a seminal work that continues to shape political thought. For Plato, the ideal state is one where justice, the highest virtue, is realized. Justice, as he conceived it, involves each part of the state fulfilling its appropriate function in harmony with the whole, ensuring that order and balance are preserved. To achieve this, Plato divided society into three distinct classes, each corresponding to specific function. First is rulers, which is philosopher king. These are wise and virtuous individuals, thoroughly trained in philosophy and endowed with the ability to discern the truth. Plato believed that only those with a profound understanding of the forms, especially the form of the good, were qualified to govern. Philosopher kings are meant to act selflessly, prioritizing the welfare of the state over personal interest, making decisions based on reason and justice. Number 2. Auxiliaries. This class comprises the warrior tasked with defending the state from external threats and maintaining internal order. They uphold the laws set by the rulers and act as the state's protective arm. Auxiliaries are expected to embody courage and loyalty, guided by the principles of the rulers. Number 3 is producers. This class includes farmers, artisans, merchants, and other individuals responsible for the state's economic activities. They ensure the material sustenance of the state, allowing the rulers and auxiliaries to focus on their respective roles. Producers are driven by their appetites and desires, but are expected to respect the authority of the rulers and auxiliaries. Plato's vision of justice is deeply tied to his concept of tripartite soul, which he described as consisting of three elements: reason, spirit, and appetite. Just as the soul achieves harmony when reason governs, supported by spirit, and appetite is kept in check, the state attains justice when rulers, auxiliaries, and producers each perform their roles without interference. Moreover, Plato emphasized education as the cornerstone of the ideal state. In his view, a rigorous and lifelong education system was essential for identifying and training philosopher kings. Education begins with basic physical and moral training for all children, progresses to advanced studies in arts and sciences for the most talented, and culminates in philosophical contemplation for the few destined to rule. The system was designed to ensure that leaders were not only intellectually capable, but also morally grounded, capable of resisting corruption, self-interest. Education for Plato was not merely about acquiring knowledge, but also about cultivating virtues and aligning the soul with the ultimate good. Next, we will look into Aristotle's critiques and alternatives of Plato's concept of ideal state. Aristotle, a student of Plato, offered a contrasting vision of the ideal state. In his work Politics, while he admired his teacher's intellectual rigor, Aristotle criticized Plato's model as too abstract and utopian. He sought to ground political theory in empirical observation and practical considerations, emphasizing the importance of moderation and adaptability in governance. Aristotle argued that Plato's philosopher's king's model and rigid class structure were impractical, oversimplifying human nature and society's complexities. Plato's idea of communal property and abolishing family structures was criticized by Aristotle for undermining personal responsibility and societal stability, as private property and family are crucial for virtue development. Aristotle also criticized Plato's focus on unity, particularly the communal upbringing of children, believing it could stifle individuality and diversity, which are essential for thriving society. These critics emphasize the need for a more practical, inclusive approach to governance. Next, we will discuss the Aristotle's visions of the ideal state. In contrast to Plato's idealism, Aristotle proposed a more pragmatic and flexible model of governance. His ideal state aims to achieve eudaimonia, or human flourishing, for the cultivation of virtue and active participation in civic life. Aristotle believed that the state exists not merely to ensure survival, but to enable its citizens to lead virtuous and fulfilling lives. Now let's discuss the key features of Aristotle's ideal state. First is mixed constitution. Aristotle advocated for a balanced government that combines elements of monarchy, ruled by one, aristocracy, ruled by the few, and democracy, ruled by the many. This mixed constitution prevents the concentration of power and ensures stability. Secondly, Aristotle highlighted the importance of a strong middle class in maintaining societal balance. He argued that extremes of wealth and poverty led to instability, conflict, while a robust middle class promotes moderation and consensus. Third is, Aristotle emphasized the supremacy of laws over individuals, arguing that a just state must be governed by rational and impartial principles rather than the whims of rulers. For Aristotle, the ideal state is one in which citizens actively participate in governance and strive to cultivate virtue. Citizenship, in his view, is not only a legal status but a moral responsibility. He believed that states should create conditions that enable individuals to develop their character and contribute to the common good. Aristotle emphasized on ethical dimension of politics, underscores his belief that the state and the individuals are interdependent. The state cannot flourish without virtuous citizens, and individuals cannot achieve their full potential outside a well-ordered political community. So learners, after discussing the historical foundation of the ideal state, which include Plato's and Aristotle's conception of the ideal state, we will now discuss the modern theories of the ideal state. In his seminal work Leviathan, Thomas Hobbes presented the vision of the ideal state, driven by the need for security and order. Hobbes famously depicted the natural condition of human beings, the state of nature, as a chaotic and violent realm, where individuals are in constant conflict due to their inherent selfishness and desire for self-preservation. In this state, life is solitary, poor, nasty, and brutish and short. Hobbes believed that without a powerful authority to impose order, society would descend into anarchy. To avoid this chaos, Hobbes proposed the establishment of a social contract, where individuals surrender their natural freedoms to a sovereign authority in exchange for security and protection. This contract would create a strong central authority, ideally an absolute monarchy, which he believed was the best form of government to maintain peace and stability. The sovereign, possessing absolute power, would ensure that individual actions are regulated to prevent disorder and violence. While Hobbes' theory has been criticized for its authoritarian implication and the suppression of individual freedoms, his emphasis on the importance of security and the necessity of a powerful central authority laid the foundation for modern political thought, particularly in discussion on the role of government in maintaining social order. In stark contrast to Hobbes, John Locke, in his two treatises of government, advocated for a more liberal and democratic ideal state. Locke's view of the state was based on natural rights, the belief that individuals inherently possess rights to life, liberty, and property. According to Locke, The role of government is not to control its citizens, but to protect these natural rights. Locke's ideal state was rooted in social contract as well, but unlike Hobbes, Locke argued for a limited government which clearly defined powers. The government's authority comes from the consent of governed, and its primary purpose is to uphold the rule of law, ensuring that individual rights are protected. This formed the basis for Locke's theory of separation of powers, which advocates for distinct legislative, executive, and judicial branches to prevent any one body from gaining excessive control and to protect individual freedoms. Locke's ideas were revolutionary in the development of modern liberal democracy and provided much of the philosophical foundation for constitutional governments, particularly influencing the formation of democratic institutions in England and the United States. His emphasis on limited government and individual rights has had a lasting impact on the development of political thought. Karl Marx, in works like the Communist Manifesto, proposed an entirely different vision of the ideal state, one that rejected the very concept of the state as an instrument of class oppression. For Marx, the state was inherently an apparatus of control, serving the interests of the ruling class. According to his theory of historical materialism, the state arises as a tool to maintain the dominance of the bourgeoisie, which means the capitalist class, over the proletariat, the working class. In Marx's ideal vision, the state would eventually wither away after the overthrow of capitalism and the establishment of a classless, stateless society. This transition would occur after a revolution in which the working class would seize control of the means of production. In this new society, there would be no private property or class distinctions, and resources would be collectively owned. People will contribute according to their abilities and receive according to their needs. Marx's visions of the ideal state thus moves away from the idea of a centralized government entirely. In a truly communist society, the government as we know it would become obsolete. Marx's critique of capitalism and his vision of a classless society have had a profound influence on socialist, communist movements worldwide, though the practical application of his ideas has been met with significant challenges and controversies. So learners, after explicating the modern theories of the ideal state, now we will explicate upon the contemporary perspective on the ideal state. In modern era, the concept of the ideal state continues to evolve, influenced by globalization, technological advancements, and increasing ethical consideration. While the basic principles of governance, justice, equity remains foundational, new challenges and ideas have emerged, reshaping how we envision the ideal state in today's world. One of the most influential contemporary philosophers on the concept of the ideal state is John Rawls, whose work, A Theory of Justice, introduced groundbreaking ideas on justice and fairness. Rawls proposed a thought experiment called the Veil of Ignorance, which asks individuals to design a society without knowing their position within it. This concept forces individuals to consider societal structures from an impartial perspective, emphasizing fairness in the distribution of resources and opportunities. Rawls outlined two principles of justice. Firstly, equal basic liberties for all, which means principle guarantees that every individual has the same fundamental rights, including freedom of speech, religion, and assembly. Secondly, social and economic inequalities are permissible only if they benefit the least advantaged. This is known as the difference principle. It permits inequalities, but only when they improve the well-being of the most disadvantaged members of society. Rawls' ideal state is one that ensures fairness, equity, justice for all its citizens. This theory provides a framework for addressing contemporary issues like poverty, inequality, and systematic discrimination, offering a more inclusive vision of societal progress. By emphasizing fairness over mere efficiency, Rawls' theory has shaped modern discussion about social justice and public policy. So learners, let's now focus on the key features of an ideal state. While the specific form of an ideal state may vary across different philosophies and cultures, certain key features are often highlighted. The first is justice. The ideal state must ensure fair treatment and equitable opportunities for all citizens, protecting their rights, liberties, regardless of their background or status. Second is rule of law. It should uphold impartial and consistent legal frameworks that apply equally to all individuals, maintaining order and resolving disputes in a fair and transparent manner. Third is welfare. A robust welfare system that provides for the basic needs of citizens, including healthcare, education, and social services, is essential for promoting the well-being of all members of society. Fourth is participations. Active civic engagement and democratic decision-making process are critical to the legitimacy of the state. The ideal state encourages its citizens to participate in governance, making decisions that affect their lives. Fifth is sustainability. The state must prioritize environmental sustainability by implementing policies that protect natural resources and ensure the long-term health of the planet. These key features provide a comprehensive blueprint for an ideal state, where the focus is not only on governance and security, but also on social well-being and ecological balance. So learners, let's focus upon the challenges of the ideal state after discussing the key features of an ideal state. The first challenge is different societies have unique values, traditions, and priorities. What might be considered ideal in one society may not be applicable in another. This cultural diversity makes it difficult to define a universal standard for the ideal state, and philosophical debates often arise about how to balance universal principles with respect for local customs and beliefs. Philosophers like Machiavelli and Nietzsche argued that human beings are inherently flawed, driven by self-interest, power dynamics. This skepticism about human nature suggests that the realization of an ideal state may be compromised by inherent flaws in individuals and groups, leading to corruption, inequality, and the abuse of power. Thirdly, even if the ideal state is theoretically possible, achieving it in practice is highly complex. Global challenges such as inequality, poverty, conflict, and climate change need pragmatic solutions that often fall short of idealistic visions. Balancing competing interests, resources, and priorities can be difficult, especially in a rapidly changing world where economic, political, and social systems are interconnected. So learners, in the conclusion, it can be said that the concept of ideal state serves both as a guide and critique, providing a vision of what society could aspire to while also highlighting the challenges and limitations inherent in governance. It offers an aspirational goal that drives political and social reforms, but also act as a critical lens through which we assess current system of governance. Although the realization of the ideal state may remain elusive, the ongoing dialogue around it reflects humanity's enduring commitment to justice, equity, and progress. By learning from historical and contemporary perspectives and adapting to the challenges of the modern world, societies can strive to approximate the ideals of governance, ensuring a better, fairer future of all citizens. Through sustained reflection and practical action, we can walk toward a world where the principles of justice, welfare, and sustainability guide the decisions of the state, where every individual has the opportunity to flourish within a harmonious and equitable society. Now learners, let's focus on the key questions that arise from the above discussion. First is, what are the essential characteristics that define an ideal state in political philosophy? Second, how do Plato's and Aristotle's views on the ideal state differ in terms of governance and justice? Third, to what extent is the concept of the ideal state applicable in contemporary political systems? Fourth is, how do modern political theories address the challenges of achieving the ideal state in the context of globalization and technological advancement? Fifth is, can the concept of the ideal state accommodate cultural diversity and varying political values across different societies? So learners, today we have explored the concept of ideal state, its historical foundations, and the different philosophical perspectives on it. Starting with Plato and Aristotle, we have also discussed the key features of an ideal state and examined some important questions that arise from this discussion. In the next videos of this unit, we will delve into concept of ideal state, the concept of education and family. Thank you for staying with me till the end of this video. See you in the next one.